Welcome to this episode of Owning Her Health with your host, Dr. Lisa Holland. Join Lisa as she starts the conversation on what it really takes to become a healthy, wealthy, and whole CEO of your life. Listen in to real talk by real lady leaders in all walks of life as they open up on personal health stories, wealth, career, and feminine abundant living. Learn how to grow by owning your body, expanding your mind, and aligning your soul with the purpose only you can pursue in this world. Happiness begins with owning her health right now.
Hey everyone, Dr. Lisa here on another season of Owning Her Health. We are opening up season 5 of Owning Her Health. It is year 5, well, end of October 2016 to 2017, 2017 to 18, 2018 to 19, 2019 to 20, 2020 to 21. So yeah, we're a little late on the startup because I had started in fall of 2016, but hell of a couple of years. So, and I've been in and out, and I understand that. But this Owning Her Health podcast has been the most right one thing that catapulted me into such a journey on my own personal power that I thought season 5 we could dedicate to that conversation around power for a couple of different reasons. For those of you who have been listening in since the very beginning, thank you so much for still being here. For those of you that I picked up along the way, thank you so much for listening in and finding something of relevance. My journey from the very beginning has always been a conversation about women's empowerment. I worked many years in healthcare and as a physical therapist and an athletic trainer, sports medicine my first decade. And then I moved over into women's health because there was a huge gap and I couldn't get any continuing education credits from the National Athletic Trainers Association for my pelvic health work I had been working on for a couple of years when I needed to renew for 2005 on, and I kind of hung up my certification over there because I knew I was never going to be really on the sidelines anymore, and I knew no one was going to give me a lobotomy in my head. And I think I counsel a lot of women that at some point, you go through phases and seasons of life and professional credentials, and we work so hard to get some of these things, but sometimes we're not using them to the degree we need to. Like if we're no longer being clinical, if I was a surgeon and I was no longer going to go into surgery, I know it is really scary to think, hey, I got this big thing and whatever, but if it was going to take me, hundreds of dollars and time and no interest anymore in certain aspects, it's time to just let that go. And that's probably the yogi side of me. For many years, after orthopedics, I started to bring in yoga since about 2000 or so. I was bringing that in, and I moved over to women's health in about 2003 to 5 was when I was learning more into that. So I basically went into this world of women's health intersecting with mind over body work from the chronic pain and orthopedics and high performance. Really, I was getting athletes, division 1 athletes, semi-professional athletes, to this higher level of performance, and it was always at their mind. Yes, they were making sure their body or their temple so that they could perform, but the energy and the power behind it was something within. And so I think most of this conversation in this season is going to be around power because I have really gone into a lot of leadership. I realized my transition out of clinical with the conversation of women's empowerment has matured as my story has undergone so much from what is a woman, right? Coming into my own womanhood, what is a mother and taking on that role, then what is a wife as I took on that role, the wife first, then mother. I think a lot thinking back of that, and I'm now divorced, and that happened over the years of 2018 to 2020. That whole poop show of what happened with my marriage, I think, has a lot to do with the fact of when I was born and the whole power dynamics between men and women, and me being a very strong woman, me needing a very strong man, not so much in the brawn as much as the inner emotional maturity, and me also undergoing a growth of being from my inner child and my adolescence and my um, adulting maturity of emotional intelligence, which honestly, when I think back, I probably became more mature through my mothering than I had been maturing my being a wife. And I don't think I really knew how to be a wife earlier on. And I don't think my husband knew how to be a husband, my ex-husband. And I think we were kind of girlfriend and boyfriending it. And so that dynamic of moving from kind of boyfriend and girlfriending it into parenting. I think we were beautiful parents together. That's the one thing that I think we were until we weren't. And I think that was a whole different dynamic. But all of that, and becoming a woman as an independent woman, as a woman born in 72, and going through, really coming into my own consciously through feminism 3.0, probably, the whole girl power thing, the 90s and into the 2000s. It really kind of left me in a position where I was almost startled by my maternity leave and my pregnancy, my first pregnancy and maternity leave, of like this push into this womanhood, this feminine side of me that I was foreign. And it really messed with my mind, and being very in career oriented and being in very masculine divisions. I mean, I don't know more competitive minded, linear minded, go, 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 willpower, cut the pain, don't have emotions there is than orthopedic sports medicine in terms of what I could done as physical therapist for 10 years. Um, and then so even that move of wanting to move into women's health was so much about me and my own evolution, pelvic floor issues that I didn't understand, and just that actually making me have troubles with my sexuality and my, just the hormonal mess up, and just trying to, the stress and the distress and that affecting my thyroid, and not understanding that till I even went into functional medicine, which wasn't even till about 10 years after being into women's health. So, there was a good 2 decades there that I was just sort of evolving and spinning my wheels, not really understanding. And had I not been in healthcare, I don't think I could have healed myself physically and mentally, because for years, since I can remember around 11 years old or so, having one of those first episodes of just real anxiety over midterms, and I know I went into bouts of depression, and I had dealt with seasonal affective disorder. It got much better when I moved down to Charlotte, North Carolina, which is in the southeast coast of the United States. But, having gone through the trauma of a huge financial infidelity, subsequent healing and processing of that in my marriage, looking back and realizing that we were, again, a great partnership for parenting, but probably were not a great marriage because of who we were. We were probably a lot more trauma bonded than really in love. And how did I know that? Is because I worked on the feminine, and I believe I fell into love during my marriage more. Not that I didn't love him, and not that I did not love our family, but I definitely got married for family. I didn't need a Prince Charming to come save me. And yet my ex's love language was, let me be the Prince Charming and come save you as my identity and my value. And I didn't understand all of this. And when I grew to start understanding it, what I didn't understand is that he did not understand it. um, he had been working on a masking and an obligation. And at the point he was miserable and was self imploding to get out of our marriage. And I was miserable in the marriage, but content because I had fallen in love with him. and our family, and in being the more feminine side. I even literally, like the last couple of years that pushed us into it was literally me kind of giving up some of the stuff I wanted to do with the women's empowerment globally and the whole start of Owning Her Health, this podcast, and where it was going with it. For whatever reason, and I'm still sort of, I believe it was divine intervention, but for whatever reason, I had gotten off track trying to support that part when it was already too late on his side. And that's something I think strong women or women who are finding their power and go off on these quests, and especially at a spiritual development level, once you've gone past the point of personal development, because I truly believe that's where the division happened with me and my ex, is that when you start going into the divine feminine, divine masculine, reunionizing that, the yoga of that, whether it's yoga or whatever you want to utilize, but that's my background, my language. When you really want the unification into a whole person, and you're not with someone who understands that you're going to be going through the darkness, you're going to be going through self-exploration, you're going to be withdrawing and cocooning and then re-emerging and trying that out and then maybe cocooning again. If you don't understand it enough, right? So that's why you have to be somewhat guided. You have to be in communities, and we're not all going to be able to go to the ashram, okay? We're not all going to be going 3 months to Bali and whatever, and that was always my hang up. I had the kids already. I had a little business already. I had a husband already. I had a cul-de-sac lifestyle already that I liked with the kids, and it was giving them a life I wanted to. I couldn't go escape like the 20-year-olds with no kids and partners, and they didn't care where they were in their career. And especially now with people being supported on insurance till 25 or 30 and school till 25 or 30 or whatever, like I had to adult to some extent, right? And I couldn't go off on these quests. And when you're stuck starting to awaken and evolve into your womanhood as a strong woman who's been very masculinized and been robbed, quite frankly, of a lot of our valuable characteristic and energetic feminine codes being activated because they've been suppressed by us, guys, by us and our ignorance, because this system, but also by us, because we get the hits. I look back now, I got the hits. I had the clock ticking feeling like I wanted to have my daughter. I literally was pulling tarot cards and she came out on them. I made my decision spiritually. I was getting the hits. What I wasn't doing was allowing myself to evolve on that spiritual path and to reclaim my feminine divine. I kept on trying to fill the box that Martha Stewart and Oprah Winfrey and Gloria Steinem and whoever the hell else and the Spice Girls and whoever was mixing into me, man-made boxes still. I was trying to work into corporate because I wanted a job. I wanted to excel. This was the game. But the reality is that it ended up being in my household, 2 entrepreneur household, 2 competitive people, 2 alphas that were vying for attention in terms of significance in the family. And we, like I said, we probably never really worked on the what is it to be a wife and a husband as much as we did to be a mother and a father. And that was our own trauma bonds of our own childhood. I thought it was evolving by his behaviors, but his behaviors were just mirroring what he thought I wanted instead of more of what he wanted. And in the end, it ended up where he had grown a lot of resentment towards me and made a story that I was so awful to him. And maybe I was being awful to him, but it was our energetics, it was energetic dynamics working against each other. We weren't really present. You know what I'm saying? And I just think that there's so many strong women that this is what happens to them. You're never really present. And it could be any relationships you're having because you're never really embodied. You're constantly vying for what is this identity I am? in my methodology, my system of looking at personal power is that that's like this core seed. I'm trying to give these women personal power. But what I would do is I would try to give them identity. I would try to give them some sort of form or how to embody that, and then help them figure out what their function is here. And for many women I worked with through the Belly Guru brand initially, their identity was kind of hit like a smack in the face, which mine was. It was my story. You're going to attract who you can help by your own stories. Was that thing where I was smacked in like, oh my God, I suddenly want to stay home with my babies and, you know, be living this life of a very traditional thing. And then all of a sudden I'm going to be dependent on my husband. And I honestly, looking back, never felt maybe that he was really on board. If again, did I get the ping? Yes, I got the ping. I always knew financial differences in how we were brought up with money stories and what we thought of money, how important that was in our lives in terms of our identity versus actual functionality, long-term game versus short game. Like this was always our problem. But somehow you fall into love or into the romance or into the family and whatever, and things get swept under the rug, and you become surviving in certain aspects. But I can say I got the ping. This was always our problem. Am I surprised that's is the thing that ended up blowing up our marriage? No, absolutely not. At the time I was, because I didn't want to look at what was being built on sand versus what was built on solid ground. And that was because I had an identity through that relationship. I had a form of what my life was through my Belly Guru and making this boutique clinic and moving where we lived and having this, part of the week cul-de-sac lifestyle stay-at-home thing mixing beautifully with this go to work and work in the studio and get to do that and start that conversation and then I had a function, but I always struggled on that function. If I had to think back, I always struggled on being present in the function of the moment. When I was home, I was thinking of career and my business. And when I was at my business and doing my career and engulfed in that, I was thinking about how I should be at home or what I should be doing there or what I wasn't doing there. And I think so many women end up dealing with that. And so we disempower ourselves, that holy trinity of identity, form, and function, and how we're going to embody that. That becomes a stumbling block. That's my Mind Body Brand Academy. That once I give them, who they are and their identity in this conversation for this program they want to launch, and the market they're going to be positioned in, then we need to make sure they have a function in that, right? So that they have a market, so that they can sell something that people want. It's always the same story. It's the same thing as when I was working with these pregnant moms and they'd be home like me and suddenly be like smacked in the face with like a whole new identity that they were not planning on. They were just planning on like, bossing it up, manning it up, giving the baby to the nanny or daycare or whatever. And now they're realizing I don't want to be a mother that way. This new identity, who do I want to be? I just went to school. I just spent all this money on this, or this was my identity. And then kind of giving them a form of what that can be in life, right? At the time, it was a healthy body, mind, and spirit, so they can go do what they've chosen to do. Most likely, a lot of them were going to be at home. Eventually, they'd maybe go back into a career and then give them that function and that permission to have that function. But it's always the same conversation, that core information around what is that? How am I going to show up in those three holy trinities? Even to the point of when I do decide to take on this power through woman womanhood as opposed to manhood, which is a decision in itself I think we need to make. And I know I'm going to get pushback from people who are saying, well, I don't really call myself a man or a woman. That's fine. But that is confusing as hell to someone who doesn't know man or woman. I find it personally hard to understand that if I did not understand how it is, sometimes I think humans need to learn. In fact, I think a majority of the time, human beings do not really learn about the world around them or themselves through complementary things, through things like having conversations with people who just think like know us, think like us, know are just like us, live our same lives, does not teach us the same as when we are in conversations with people who are in contrast to us. And the problem with the evolving human right now is that we are so triggered, we're so traumatized, we're so uncomfortable with our identity, with the form we've taken in our embodiment of that identity for the time and season of our life, with the function we have in that identity and in that form. We're so uncomfortable that our personal power is so low that we either want to rob it from somebody else, or we want to live vicariously through someone else's power, or we're just totally against them having power so that we can feel bigger when they're smaller. And it is hard to have an identity when there's nothing to contrast on, right? Like if you are everything, which we're all trying to get that consciousness of, I 100% agree with that. But if our sense of self is some blend of everything we are, but we have no boundaries, this is where we get into the masculine and feminine of it all. I'm sorry, but there's a yin, there's a yang. There's a black, there's a white, and there's a gray spectrum that's a mix of that. And the irony is that white light is all the colors, and if you take your crayons and you put all the colors together, you will get black. So in essence, they are the same thing, but in our perception, they're seemingly one without the other, right? But the reality is they're one with the other because light comes from the darkness. And darkness is a world or a period without light, without enlightenment. Woman came out of man. The light came out of the darkness. But dark is not bad. Light is not necessarily good. If you turn on the light on a sleeping child, they're going to scream. It's a very bad experience. That doesn't mean light bulbs and electricity are bad. This is the problem in human evolution right now. We've gotten to the point we're so damn triggerable that we are so sensitive to being in that division, in that contrast, either because of our own lack of self identity and confidence and value and esteem, or because it's the opposite. It's this overinflated, overimportance of us over whatever anybody else has to say. And we constantly, the human condition is constantly struggling on that. And so where is this all going as we close up this sort of little power chat and reason we're going to explore all these things on season 5 pertaining to this anointing and this embodiment of humanness through womanhood, through the choice of womanhood. That's my conversation. That's who her is. Her, she is that. She is the chosen soul. She is the soul that has chosen to take the function and form of the feminine. And we really seriously, and again, I'll take the pushback. This is just where I am. I don't think the universe is built on us all saying we're one in the sameness that it has become a conversation of. I think the universe makes it very clear that no two snowflakes are alike, even though you can't see it necessarily with the human eye, and you need the microscope. You need the high-powered study view. It's not going to come out of the 360 view. It's going to come from a very finite view. Whereas in other types of ways, if I were to put a piece of hair underneath a microscope and only show you the thousandth, times specialized view, you may say it's a piece of rope because you don't have the 360 perspective. So yes, we need worldview, we need self-view in order to see the truth. And we need contrast, and we need the her and the feminine in the conversation without it being anti-masculine. We need the masculine in the conversation without that being anti-feminine. We need that from the men as much as we need that from the women on both of those sectors. Because in and of itself, we do have this dynamic. We do have this dichotomy. We seem to be formed in halves. We seem to split into two. We don't remain one. And in the end, it creates two identical things that then some force in them makes them become many, many different things. This is humans too. And so this conversation is a much more convoluted one that we're going to break down. I'm going to try to bring it into the talk of both the holistic community, like a mind, body, soul kind of talk, but also in the world of real science and real grounded, more academic, worldly, everyday terms, because we're all evolving humans. We're all medicine women and men. We're all divine, ethereal creatures of a spirit living in this soul. Containment. The masculine contains, that force contains us, interjects us with some sort of function for the purpose of being able to then explore the different aspects of our identity and explore our different forms in the feminine aspect of that part of us. This is an evolving conversation, and I so love the energetics. I think that's why I was drawn to the Vedic wisdoms and the speaking of the universe and the speaking of down to its people and everything in the world to the energetics, because it's a very quantum mechanics kind of conversation. And I just feel so blessed to have been led to it. And maybe you feel this way too, to have been led to it even before the world has moved from the Newtonian physics conversation to a quantum physics conversation. This was a calling for you. This is you being able to hear as you go on the spiritual development journey. The personal development journey will not give you the ears for these things. You would not be hearing and listening to me and understanding what I'm saying to any extent if you had some point not taken the big leap from being really good at this worldly thing to going into your greatness. Because that jump, that leap, that big leap from good to great is a spiritual journey. It's a personal development. It's not going to take you there. You need to believe in greatness. It's a role of faith. It's a leap of faith. If you don't have faith, let's just say it this way. If you only have faith in you, you're going to fall. You're not going to make it. You're not going to have enough momentum. You're not going to have enough consistency. You're not going to have enough belief. The beliefs that you get through the belief systems of personal development are only going to take you so far. And the oomph to get from good to great is a faith-based journey. And so this is why you cannot just study the mind and the body and not at some point start seeing spirituality in that. And this is why at some point scientific discovery and the more we go out into the space and into the waters and whatnot is going to keep showing us spirituality. And when I say spirituality, I think it's just the most intimate form of self-expression, which requires self-inquiry, which requires a level of desire and passion and compassion for the sacredness of studying life. Because it's not an easy journey. Once you go there, I tell people all the time when I was working with yoga and spiritual development with them from that perspective, are you sure you want to go down this path? Because it's like eating the apple. You can't go back. You can't try to throw it up. Once you get this level of longing for the oneness, and it's not an easy path. Just like entrepreneurship. That's why I speak about that. Everybody presents it like it's this the easier way to go. No, siree. Being an employee, mindlessly coming from 9 to 5 or 8 to 4, or however you're working it now, but when you turn on that thing, you've got tasks to do, you've got the role delineations there. You just figure out how to do it. It's very different than taking a leap into the unknown with this inner knowing, but yet it's intangible form right now. Your final function is intangible. Your identity is very clear, sometimes more clear than being an employee. But being an employee, your form is very clear and your function becomes very clear unless your boss stinks, right? But it's kind of like, in order to get all three and truly come into your own personal power, I believe there needs to be a move from good to great, and I believe there needs to be a faith-led leap. And I believe ultimately that's why women who are trying to gain power need a voice like me to help them become empowered through a spiritual journey at some point. Because otherwise, they're really never going to get that holy trinity of identity, function, and form where it feels aligned and natural for them. Men aren't either. I just don't necessarily. In fact, here's what I'm going to say. In 2022 and in season 5, I think I am talking to a lot of men. I think a lot of men need this conversation. I just don't necessarily tend to work with them because number one, they don't come and approach me. I've been told I am intimidating. I don't think that's the right word that those people were using. And I've been told that by very strong, surprisingly strong women as well as men. I think there's another word that they're looking for. I think it's what's intimidating is them looking at themselves through me sometimes and their greatness, because I think I shine to others their potential. At least that's what I want to do. And I think for some men who have been fighting so long to find women like me who can match them on certain things, but also let them surrender without losing their man card. And again, this is an evolving conversation because I don't think I had that. I think I thought that, and I think I evolved to that. I don't think I always had that skill in my marriage and in any of my relationships, but I think I gained it, but I don't think I communicated it. And I think at the time I could have communicated it, or when I went in, it's very funny because again, divine journeys, and we're going to be talking about this on the podcast, but this was meant to be. This isn't a matter of me saying, oh my God, I ruined my marriage, he ruined our marriage or whatever. No. I think this had an intervention for the reason of me being whatever I'm going to be to whoever I'm going to be to. But I do know now through that if the person's not receptive, if my ex could not access his feminine side comfortably at the time I was in my feminine, like we were both in our masculine at the same time, and then we were both in our feminine at the same time, and that's what didn't work. We didn't know the dance. We didn't know the curvy hustle. We didn't have developed that. And marriage really is developing that dance. Relationship in general is that dance. There's different levels of transaction. There's different intimacy levels of transaction. Business is that dance. That's the conversation I want to have. It's a conversation around power, but it's a very different kind. It's in a different form that I think men actually need as well. So I invite you to listen to this in front of your man. He's probably not going to put on the Owning Her Health podcast, although I do have 25% of millennials as my audience, or at least I did. I'm going to see how it goes after some break right now, but I invite you that if you are struggling in relationship as you becoming this evolving woman, if you're struggling in relationship with yourself, if you're struggling in relationship at work dynamics, if you're struggling in relationship with personal intimate dynamics with people, with even like your mothering, like giving that up, letting the child grow up and make their own mistakes, that's the same thing. It's a relational dynamics, it's energetic dynamics, it's masculine, feminine, to some extent, yin yang, black white, polarities and complements. it's a quantum conversation. It's a spiritual conversation. Power is a spiritual conversation. We just have not known it to be. But I think if we speak in that, that's something everyone can share, even if you don't define yourself as a man or a woman. You do hopefully define yourself as a force of nature. And that force requires some sort of vitality and power behind it to go in a specific direction. That direction you're going to choose, that's where you need your mindset. The pacing you're going to have, that's where you need to understand your function and your flow, your form, you know, so that you're healthy. Because if you don't understand your form, you're going to be doing things at someone else's pace for their form. You're going to be taking on somebody else's identity for their form. So all of this conversation and owning her health is still very relevant. It's still about the body. It's still about the mind. It's still about the soul, and the spirit in all of it. We're going to get a little bit more into in season 5, and I look forward to it. Give me some feedback. Come email me at support@drlisahollandpt.com. Let me know what you're thinking. If you ever see a comment box underneath any of the shows or on any things, please give me a comment. Please go over to iTunes and give me a good review, or on any of the other podcast platforms if you get an opportunity. If you enjoy this show, it just helps me. It helps me to like it. It helps me if you see it, any sort of thing, to like it or whatever. It helps it to get in front of other people, because if you've benefited and you've gotten it, I want other people to too. That's how you can help the mission here. This very much has become a ministry for me, and I really appreciate any little bit you can do. I would love for you to buy my products. I would love for you to be in part of Mind Body Brand Academy, contribute to the conversations. I'd love to help you. I want to serve you in this way, obviously. I'm doing these things for that. But if you can just share it with somebody in need, give it a like, give it a review, that helps me too. That helps the big picture too. And we're really doing something. We're really birthing this evolving womanhood, woman conversation. We're doing it for the men too. We're doing it for relationships, and that's always going to help our next generation and our children. All right, guys, I'll see you next time on Owning Her Health. We're going to have Katrina Roddy, who is talking about the corporate breakup. All right, guys, talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening into this episode of Owning Her Health with Dr. Lisa Holland. To learn more about her personal and professional development service, visit her online at drlisahollandpt.com.